Good afternoon. I have the honor of introducing our patient spotlight section. You'll hear from a panel of 3 patients, each with an empowering story. First, Evan Green. Evan is co-founder of 3 Emerald Marketing, a strategic marketing agency driving innovation for clients across music, sports, and entertainment. One of the marketing industry's leading voices, Evan spent 10 years marketing some of Hollywood's biggest films and served for 16 years as Chief Marketing Officer of the Recording Academy, where he crafted the marketing strategy to build the Grammys into one of the world's most recognized and coveted brands. He was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis in July 2003 at age 34 and has been managing his symptoms on a daily basis ever since. Years ago, recognizing the lack of support for patients and their families, he began the Los Angeles MG Support Group to provide a comfortable environment to share, learn, and connect with others who face the challenges and hardships of this disease. He has raised over $50,000 for the MGFA and remains dedicated to helping others understand and cope with life with MG. He still remains the MGFA support group leader in Los Angeles. Next, I would like to introduce Sarah Rutledge. At age 78, Sarah has over 60 years experience with myasthenia gravis. She is the mother of 2 boys and 4 beautiful granddaughters. Sarah fundraises and also volunteers for the MGFA as an MG friend, where she helps newly diagnosed patients and others that want to connect with someone one-on-one. Lastly, Mckenzie Connor. Kinsey was diagnosed with MG when she was 3 years old and has now lived with MG for 20 years. She is hoping to attend graduate school to become a genetic counselor, where she can help other people navigate the unknown of their health journey. In her free time, Kinsey enjoys spending time at the beach, kayaking, and seeking out the best coffee shops. Kinsey also volunteers as an MG friend. Help me welcome Evan, Sarah, and Mckenzie.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. So I'm here to talk a little bit about my MG journey over the course of the past 18 years. There's been a number of ups and downs, some peaks, quite a few peaks and valleys. But at the end of the day, this is a story of hope. As you can see, I'm the guy here on the bottom right with the black parachute with the red piping. And my story really, I like to classify my story as kind of a life interrupted by myasthenia gravis. I'll take you through a little bit of kind of where I was, where I am, where I'm going. Pre-diagnosis, I was somebody who was really defined by physical activity, by the things that I did. This is a picture of me up at about 22,000 feet in Ecuador. I was the kind of person that was always looking for the next thing. And, I think my life in a lot of ways was defined by the things that I did. And it was sort of, and it was how I really looked at myself. And in a lot of ways, it was how I kind of derived a lot of my self-worth. Back in 2003, about 18 years ago, was a milestone year for me. I had my first child. I was a new father. I ended up with a job of a lifetime. I ended up getting the nod and the tap on the shoulder to become the chief marketing officer for the Recording Academy, otherwise known around the world as the Grammys. I was 34 years old. I felt like, I was in peak physical shape. My life was working in a lot of ways. I had a lot of things to be happy and thankful for. And then I ended up with some devastating, life-changing news, which was that I had been diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, which was a disease at the time no one that I knew had ever heard of. And many people, most people, had a hard time even pronouncing it. So it started with a drooping eyelid and double vision. Not knowing any better, I went to I went to the optometrist and got glasses, and that made my eyes worse. That didn't help at all. And then when I would do physical activity or I'd be in the gym, my arms would collapse. I'd drop weight on myself. I couldn't, I couldn't hold things. And, being a mid-30s guy without, ever having any significant physical issues previously, I just sort of, I mistakenly assumed that I just wasn't working hard enough, or I had to work out more, or I had to try more. And I just kind of kept pushing it off and pushing it off. Well, things started to get worse. I got to a point where not only could I not do the things that would give me pleasure and joy, but I couldn't even handle basic life functions. I couldn't pull the shirt off my back. I couldn't dress myself, brush my hair, lift my arms. Even simple tasks like being in the car and holding my hands on the steering wheel, or moving my arm to put my seatbelt on became impossible. So I started losing functional use of my arms, and I was unable to lift my infant daughter. My daughter's entire lives, I've never been able to lift them above my head and play with them in the same way that many other people have enjoyed. And so we spent about 8 months. Went through a lot of neurologists. There were not a lot of people that knew much about myasthenia gravis back in 2000, early 2003. A number of neurologists were convinced that I had MS, and they were looking for symptoms and a diagnosis to confirm that it was MS. And after 8 months, we finally had a definitive conclusion that I had myasthenia gravis. And as many of you may know, MG can be a bit of an elusive disease to diagnose. And so after spinal taps and blood tests and brain scans and nerve conductivity tests and tensilon tests and all of that, many of which came back as false negatives, we finally got a diagnosis. And at the time, it was really, I faced some pretty dark periods, mostly because there weren't a lot of resources to help me through what I was going through and to understand what I was going through. But at the time, given the kind of person that I was, having MG and having some dramatic physical limitations forced me to evaluate a lot of things about my life, about who I thought I was, about the things that defined me, about the things that got me excited in life. And a lot of that had to do with my sense of self, and many of my future ambitions were wrapped up in physical activity and the things that I had planned to do. And so, I've described MG in the past to people as it's a bit of a thief. MG has the ability to take things away from you. And this is not a story of woe, and this is not a story of depression. Ultimately, this is a story of hope. But to get to that point was quite a journey. These are the medications and the treatments that I've been through. I had a thymectomy early on, and they didn't get all the tissue, so I had to get another thymectomy. So I've had 2 thymectomies. So pretty much, compared to any other myasthenic patient I know, I win in terms of the number of thymectomies that I've had. I've been on prednisone. I've been on Cellcept. I've been on Mestinon. I've been on potassium. Been on calcium, testosterone, Imuran. I receive treatments every 3 weeks of IVIG. I'm also on Soliris, which is the first new drug that's been approved for the treatment of MG in many decades. And, I can say that the thing that's really helped me through is having knowledgeable, caring caregivers and the MGFA, and really taking proactive control and management of my condition and my MG has allowed me to lead a pretty normal life. So my journey, I have to say that in my experience and in working with and helping a number of, frankly, countless people who have been diagnosed with MG as well as their families, I can tell you that immediately after diagnosis is the hardest time. It was the scariest time. It was the most uncertain time, mostly because I felt completely and totally alone. Um, Despite the fact that my wife was there for me and I had a family that was there for me, that there were friends that were there for me, there was some embarrassment, there was some shame about the fact that, I wasn't able to do basic physical activity that I was sort of known for. It was, it became the hardest part is that I felt like nobody really understood. People could be there and people could offer support, but nobody really was living in the shoes of somebody with myasthenia who could not make their body act and respond the way that they had always done. And it felt limiting. It felt really, it was tough. And after a number of years, I started to manage my MG and I started to recognize and realize how much there was for life to offer and what a blessing it was and how thankful I was just to be able to experience what life has to offer. And it got me to a point where a real key in my journey and my evolution was that I didn't want others to go through what I had gone through, because the MGFA has evolved in an extraordinary way in the last 2 decades. And the resources to help and to understand were not there. And so I decided many years ago that I wanted to start the LA MG support group. At the time when I was diagnosed, there were no support groups. I found a phone number on, after researching on the internet for quite a while, and the phone number was disconnected. And, the communication between the foundation was sort of limited and splintered and bifurcated. And so I decided that I wanted to create a place in LA where folks with MG could come to feel comfortable, to belong, to share, to learn, and to realize and understand that there really are others who understand, and frankly, that it's going to be okay. I have to say that, over the last many years, I've gotten more and more involved in MGFA. And what once was an organization with very limited resources, little national organization, an organization that was difficult to contact with very confusing and unfocused communication. And there was also another organization that was sort of in sort of pseudo competition with MGFA, and it made understanding what was going on in the world of MG very difficult and very confusing. And fast forward to today, there's an organization that is far more organized, far more professional. The growth and the expansion has been extraordinary. The MGFA has raised a significant amount of resources for research, which is quite a feat because MG is a very rare disease, as we all know, and it's not common. It doesn't get a lot of press. It doesn't get a lot of focus and attention from the broader medical world. And so resources are very limited, and MGFA is really working hard to change that. And they've also created a patient database where they can learn from patients' experiences, and they can use patients' experiences to connect with each other and to actually increase the service that they provide and increase and hasten the resolution of this fight against MG. And at the end of the day, MGFA has become a truly robust and sophisticated organization that is wholly dedicated to fighting and winning the fight against MG. So fast forward to today, and I've gotten to the point where I've accepted the fact that MG is part of my daily life. I accept it. I effectively manage it. My family and I make jokes about it. And it's allowed me It's allowed me to stop and to focus on those things that are really important in life. It's made me appreciate those blessings like time with family, time with friends, travel. It's also encouraging that there's been a lot of positive momentum. There's been new drugs, there's better research, and frankly, there's more progress than ever in the fight against MG. And I attribute a lot of that to MGFA. So I'm very thankful and appreciative to what MGFA is doing. I think one of the most powerful things that I can say is that not only is there more hope than ever, but hope is so important, and it is so powerful. Today, back in the day where my life was really defined by physical activity and the things that I did, now I've got a deep appreciation, and my life is defined by experiences, by friends, by family. And, as I kind of wind down my comments here, I just want to close on a handful of thoughts. And those are that there are a lot of resources available. You don't have to go through MG feeling alone. You don't have to go through MG feeling like there aren't other people that are going through the same thing and that understand. The MG is here for patients, families, caregivers. One of the most important things in my journey is that I advocated for myself and I educated myself. So be proactive, ask questions, talk to as many people as possible, learn from as many people as you can. There are no silly questions. There are no irrelevant questions. This is all about learning. It's all about your health, and it's all about educating and advocating for yourself. The more you know, the better you can advocate for yourself, and the more fulfilling and better life you can lead. It's really important, as I've mentioned, that you understand that there are others who understand. There are others who are there to help. And, I know I've said this before, but I can't stress it enough. You don't have to go through MG alone. Reach out to the MGFA, join a support group. Attitude is about the most important thing that you can use. It's one of the most important tools that you have to fight against the depression that comes with MG. And as I touched on earlier, hope is incredibly powerful. Hope is really what has gotten me through, and hope is there to get a lot of people through what MG puts us all through. So as I close, I simply want to leave you with a note about myself, that MGA is part of me. MG is a part of my life. It's part of who I am, but MG does not control me, and certainly MG no longer defines me. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attention, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there is hope and there is help out there. So thank you.
I want to thank the MGFA for inviting me to make my story here. It's a long one, so I'm going to get right to it. I was born in a 2-bedroom farmhouse about 30 miles west of Indianapolis, with 3 older brothers waiting in the wings. My aunt tells me that I was born with a cord around my neck, sign of things to come. At about the age of 2, I decided to ride my brother's bike and pulled it over on top of me. I had a broken leg near the pelvis. I was in a body cast from armpits to toenails, down both legs. Mom said I was the only child she ever saw that could wear the knees out of a body cast. Mother was the night assistant director of nursing at Indiana University Medical Center Riley Hospital for children in Indianapolis. This will be critical later. Yes, I was the imp in the family. Jumping ahead, I did not realize that I needed to rest more often than the other kids in the family. I thought I was like everybody else. By this time, there were 7 of us siblings. You know how the girls are about their hair. I found that I could not comb or brush my hair all at one time. I would give it about 3 swipes, and then my arms would fall to my side. I'd have to wait about 5 minutes, and then I could get maybe 3 more swipes in. And putting curlers in my hair would take at least an hour. So I cut my hair short, and we let God do the curling. In 1956, my little sister was bruising badly, and there was concern for her health. It was decided to wait and make a diagnosis later on. But in April that year, I started seeing double. I wouldn't tell my family because I had a roller skating party to go to the next week, and I got to skate with a good-looking guy. One day after the party, Mom found me walking around with my hand covering one eye. She asked me how come, and I said, well, I've been seeing double for about a week, and I don't want to run into you. Well, as a nurse, she got a little upset. So in 1956, a brain tumor was the only go-to diagnosis for seeing double. I saw an eye specialist the next day. He said, you don't need me. You need a neurosurgeon. In those days, a brain tumor was the only diagnosis they could think of for seeing double. So they did not have any MRIs or CAT scans back then. When we saw the neurosurgeon, they recommended a brain biopsy. So I was put on the emergency list for a hospital bed. Now, I would recommend that you might get your Kleenexes handy for the rest of this story. I was put in Methodist Hospital in Midtown, Indianapolis on a Friday. It was decided to put my sister in the hospital to see about her diagnosis. So she was put in Riley Hospital on the west side of Indianapolis on Sunday. On Monday, I had the biopsy. It was negative for a tumor. So now I had no diagnosis for seeing double. Ada was diagnosed with leukemia. She took all the experimental drugs that Eli Lilly was working on at the time and lived to late fall, which was a very long time for a leukemia case in those days. That was her gift to science. On Tuesday, you still got your Kleenexes? Dad told Mom that he had hurt himself Saturday night at work. He was put in St. Vincent's Hospital on the south side of Indianapolis. He was diagnosed with a ruptured shoulder muscle and had to have surgery. Now here's Mother trying to see 3 different people in 3 different hospitals every day and 5 more kids at home. She would walk through the house saying, God never gives you more than you can handle. We learned at a very early age that faith, family, and a good sense of humor would get you through about anything. About a month later, my oldest brother was getting married. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid. The lady that was helping us when we were picking out our dresses said, well, you could take the headpieces and put them on backwards so that she could cover her head with a veil. We all got a good laugh out of that because I had what they call a casket cut, where they would leave you some bangs and some sprigs on either side of your face, and the rest of your head was shaved clean, and I had 2 extra holes in my head by that time. Brother number 2 was also graduating that same week that brother number 1 was getting married. But let's go on a couple of more years. In 1958, the brother that had been graduating began having difficulty in college. He could no longer run between the classes and get there in time, so he was getting very weak, and Mother decided to take him for an evaluation. He ended up seeing Dr. J.E. Tether at the Indiana University Neurologic Lab. He was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. Mother put 2 and 2 together and said, Sarah, you're going with us on his next visit. Dr. Tether saw me and immediately said, I want to test her. He noticed the improvement in my droopy eyes as soon as he started putting in the Tensilon in my arm. And by the time he got finished, there was a significant difference. I was started on Medinone that day. I was dating a fine young man at that time, and he was studying everything he could find at the library because there wasn't any computers to look at. And he had a grandfather that had been a doctor. So he got his grandfather's medical books out, and there was one paragraph on myasthenia gravis. These books were printed in the late 1800s. We were married in 1961, and in 1963, we were pregnant with our first. I tripled my Mestinon during the first 2 trimesters. But during the 3rd trimester, I went into remission. I took my last Mestinon tablet about a month before he was born. I did real well with the pregnancy, but the delivery itself, I didn't have the strength to push hard enough. So he was what they call a high forceps delivery. You still got that Kleenex? During the labor, the doctor told my husband that they might have to make a choice between me and the baby. But he said, I'll make the choice, you won't have to. Well, the delivery went well, and nowadays, or even just a few years later, they would have planned this as a C-section. But that one weighed 812, and he's doing fine. 7 years later, I was pregnant again. Another great pregnancy, still in remission. This time he was breech. The doctor said, well, at least I'll have a handle this time. Delivery went well, 9:13. But the next day I weighed as much as I did the day before. And my legs were very swollen. I spent 5 days in the hospital. This was not MG related. I was told I could not have any more, or should not have any more children. Hubby agreed that a 10-pound, 14-ounce was not gonna happen. By this time, we had moved to Mississippi. In 1983, I had surgery and had forgotten to tell the anesthesiologist about my myasthenic history. I was still in what I thought was remission. You still got your Kleenexes, right? I had an asthmatic shutdown during the surgery and again in the recovery room. This might have been an MG crisis, but since I was in remission, we didn't relate it. I had told the nurse to let the surgeons know about the MG, and she did get the message to them, so they were able to take care of the situation. It's extremely important that you let the anesthesiologist or the surgeon know that you have a myasthenic history, even if you are in remission. There are different medications that they use. I began to feel the symptoms of MG returning, but I ignored them. I was working as a cardiac sonographer and also had worked in the cardiac cath lab. I worked at this hospital for over 26 years, thinking all this time I'm in remission. But I fell a couple of times while I was in the cath lab for no apparent reason, and eventually realized I could no longer walk the halls of the hospital without stopping to rest. So I retired in 2003. I decided it was time to see the neurologist and gave him the history, including my diagnosis from Dr. Tether. He did some of his own testing and put me back on Mestinon. He agreed immediately that I was an MGer. After a couple of years, I had a flare and was put on Prednisone and had some IVIG. I had IVIG for a few years, then improved to the point where I no longer needed the IV. In 2015, I had an episode where I could not stand up. I called the neurologist. He said to call 911 and get to the hospital. Well, I passed out as we entered the hospital. They could not find the problem. See, I don't feel pain like most people, so I didn't have any symptoms that I could tell them. For 4 days, the doctors could not look my husband in the eye. Finally, I was stable enough to go to surgery. At that time, they found a perforated ulcer bleeding into the belly. I was put in a medicated coma for a couple of weeks. When they brought me out of the coma, I could not move anything. I could move my eyes, I could blink my eyes, and I could turn my head just a little bit. So they put me on plasmapheresis at that time. And after about 5 sessions of the plasmapheresis, it helped me to the point where they were able to stand me up and I was taking a few steps. You know, that stuff is good for you. I think I'm running out of time. I can talk all day about MG, as you can see. I've had many experiences with the symptoms as well as the treatments. Today I'm on Imuran, Mestinon, and monthly IVIG. I'm doing well considering we live at home and we do our own housework, our own cooking. I'm president of our neighborhood association, secretary treasurer of our retirement group, and active as an MG friend, enjoying life. Hubby and I will be celebrating our 60th wedding anniversary this year. Some advice for parents with kids that have MG. Don't limit their imagination. Don't tell them they can't try something. Allow them to try. They will figure out what their limits are. Also, as adults, keep in touch with your neuro. And research is changing. I've seen so much improvement in the testing and the treatments. So you want to be sure that you keep involved. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day. And any questions, I'll be glad to answer later.
Hello, my name is Kenzie. I have been a myasthenia gravis patient since I was 3 years old. I feel so honored and blessed to be able to share my story with all of you today. My MG story is 20 years in the making. So I put together a little presentation just so you can see things from my point of view and see some photos and hopefully make this story a little bit more entertaining as well, since it might be a long one. So I'm going to share my screen with you and get started. So my MG story, like I said, is 20 years in the making. I was born in the year 1997 and I was diagnosed with MG in the year 2000. So I was just 3 years old when I was diagnosed. And when I was first born, I had no issues. I was carried to term. I was a healthy baby. I was diagnosed when I was 3 years old. Like I mentioned, I woke up one morning and I had a hard time opening my eyes. So I was seeing a specialist and I was diagnosed with a tensilon test that confirmed that I had myasthenia gravis. My MG symptoms are mostly just in my eyelids. I mostly just have ocular symptoms. I have some generalized symptoms, more so just some general weakness in my arms and in my legs that my current neurologist puts into the category of generalized, but most of my symptoms of complaint are just with my eyelids. I was checked for antibodies. I was negative for all antibodies, didn't have any mass on my thyroid. I tried IVIG to hopefully spark a bit of a remission, and that attempt had failed. And I was put on Mestinon, and unfortunately that did not help me. It just gave me worse symptoms. The ptosis was in both eyelids, and it just seemed to make things worse. So these photos now are from when I was in about preschool through second grade. I was immediately put on prednisone to treat my symptoms. I think at the time, with me being so young and it being in the year 2000, it was hard for my doctors to treat me. And they weren't really sure what to do. So they knew that prednisone worked. They put a 30-pound child on 60 milligrams of prednisone. So of course, I had a lot of side effects. I had the water retention that you see in the moon face. My growth was also stunted. I just stopped growing from the prednisone as well. And I was also taking Cellcept. So these photos can be kind of hard for me to look at. I just know that I wasn't a healthy child because of what prednisone was doing to me. but prednisone really never stopped me, or my MG never stopped me from doing what I wanted to do. So I was a very good soccer player. I was a very, very fast runner, and I was just overall a very happy child. I started being weaned off of prednisone in about 2005 or so. I was seeing an endocrinologist to talk about my short stature issue that had happened from taking prednisone, and my endocrinologist had brought that to the attention of my neurology team. She had contacted my neurology team and told my parents that I just shouldn't look this way. She could see what the MG was doing what the prednisone was doing to my body, and she could just tell that I wasn't looking healthy because of this. So she urged my specialist on my neurology team to wean me off of prednisone. So it took me many years to finally get off of prednisone completely, because my body was so used to being on it and really needed it. So I did get off of the prednisone. So this is a picture of me in 3rd grade, and then sort of snaking through here about 4th grade, and then finally in 5th grade as well. So I was a much more healthy looking child for sure. And there was some conversation about me taking human growth hormone as well, that I wouldn't grow over the height of about 4'8" or 4'9", but I'm actually 5'1" today. So I am fairly petite, but I'm no really shorter, or especially shorter than other women. Now, these photos are really fun for me to look at, because I feel like this is a very fun time in my life. This is when I was in about middle school, and then to my freshman year in high school. So this is about 6th grade or so, and 8th grade in high school. At this time, I don't think I had fully hit puberty just yet, and I was in remission. By my standards. To me, I really had very few day-to-day symptoms. Couldn't really tell that I had MG. Our students didn't really, students would sometimes, my classmates would ask me if I had a lazy eye, and things like that. But other than a few symptoms when I was just sleepy or tired, I really didn't have a lot of symptoms. So it was really a great time for me. I was only taking Cellcept, and was very photogenic, really into theater and performing. So this is a very fun time in my life. I was diagnosed with a new autoimmune disease in 2012. So my MG symptoms at that time began to worsen, and kind of takes me to where I am today with my symptoms. I was a sophomore in high school when I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. I was diagnosed very suddenly as well. I was seeing an endocrinologist to address the short stature, and we decided against the human growth hormone. So there was really nothing else for me to be seeing her. So she wanted to just take some blood work before I finally end my care with her. And she tested my thyroid levels. My thyroid levels were way out of bounds where they should have been. And it was actually my neurologist that had contacted me to share that with my family. So what had happened was my doctor in my endocrinology office actually didn't contact my parents to disclose those levels to me. So my neurologist, saw the levels, and he brought it up in an appointment when I was seeing him. And he was like, what's going on with these levels? They look really crazy, out of bounds here. What are we doing to address this? And it was not brought to our attention. So we contacted the endocrinologist. I had some testing done, and it confirmed I have Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. So autoimmune hyperthyroidism. At that point, my MG symptoms have really worsened, and I was just not really doing well. I was having a lot of double vision that I could not control, and just really severe ptosis in the eyelid as well. So I went back on prednisone until about 2015. I started taking Mestinon, and it started to help, which was wonderful. I'm still taking that today, and I started receiving IVIG treatments at home as well. I still lived my best life in high school, and I went to college. I still danced and performed, and I attended the University of Central Florida and graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Science degree. So I certainly still did everything that my friends did. I tried to make sure that I would be able to do all of those things. I had a thymectomy in 2016. At that time, I had actually tested positive for AChR antibodies. So my neurologist thought that I had qualified by his standards to try to get a thymectomy and just see if it would help my symptoms at all. Unfortunately, it didn't. It's not something that I regret doing, but it was certainly an experience that I just wanted to try, because I'm one of those patients that's just willing to try anything, since my MG symptoms really haven't gotten better. They were the best when I was in that sort of period of remission. So I always think back to that time and just want to have those same, have that same feeling again. So unfortunately, I still live with my symptoms, but that's okay. I have been involved in a number of activities. So when I was in college, I sought out Dance Marathon, and FTK stands for the Kids. I was a leadership member in NIFOM. That's the Dance Marathon program at UCF. We raise money for our local Children's Miracle Network Hospital in Orlando. I was the dancer relations manager, so I oversaw all of the people that attended that event, and I attended and was a leadership member in all of my 4 years in college. So it was one of the highlights of my life at this point. And it was just really nice to be able to be surrounded by people that I know lifted up children with disabilities and children with chronic illnesses. So it was certainly people that I really enjoyed spending my time around. I think it's important to talk about the emotional weight of disease when we're talking about living with MG. I live with generalized anxiety disorder. I sought out help in 2016. And I think that my social anxiety and a lot of the anxiety that I live with is really rooted in having MG, and a lot of negative associations that I've always given to having MG, and then the negative associations and negative self-talk that I then give myself. So, in being a child and growing up in a really pivotal point in your life as you're growing, and you're having people ask you why you have a lazy eye, or what's wrong with you, oh, you have a disease, and things like that. It can be really hurtful and really change the way your brain wires and thinks about yourself. So it's something that I have certainly worked on, and I no longer try to hide having MG from people, but I think it's important to really talk about how emotional this process can be for all of us, and how emotional this journey is. So I have taken the opportunity to become an MG friend through MGFA. I discovered MGFA quite recently, just over the summer, and I am able to speak with people who are newly diagnosed with MG and just support them through their health journey. And I have had so many opportunities through MGFA, and in this conference experience now, I just never imagined that I would be in this place, that I would have an opportunity to talk about my MG in a way that's empowering. So I just have so much thanks for MGFA for all of these opportunities that I have been able to have. And that really takes me to today. So I am currently 23 years old. I am pursuing a graduate school for genetic counseling. Genetic counselors support people through their genetic testing process and their health journey as well. So they tell them about genetic testing, those results, and options and next steps that you can take from there. And I will hopefully be matched with a program on April 23rd, which is 2 days before my birthday. So I'm really looking forward to that date. I have a full-time job. I am in a committed relationship for the last 3.5 years with someone who loves me unconditionally and builds me up. And that's really something that I feared, treating my MG as baggage, that, maybe someone wouldn't want to be in a relationship with me. But that's certainly not the case. And I am really no longer hiding my MG. I take this opportunity to educate people about what MG is, and I really use it as a platform to advocate for myself and advocate for other patients that are navigating their own health journey. And I hope that my story can be empowering for someone here that's listening, and just know that I'm here and I'm okay. And it's such an honor to be able to share my experience with all of you. So thank you so much, and thank you, MGFA, and have a great rest of your conference experience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to Evan, Sarah, and Kenzie for sharing your stories with us. They were all amazing. I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to see a short hula exercise video, and then we're going to take a break, and we will be back at 2:15 Eastern Time for financial considerations for MG patients. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Sue Jorgensen. I'm a representative of Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience. I'm also a wellness instructor, and I've been doing that for about more like 15 years. And as you can see, I dance hula. So thank you for joining me today, and hopefully you enjoyed the hula that I just did, which was to the song Kanaka Vai Vai. Now, hula in Hawaii is an integral part of culture, and probably the most popular hula that you see in America today is the awana. So awana hula means to wander. And the hula that I just did was a very free-flowing, wandering kind of hula. The ancient hula is kahiko, and that was more chants to the gods. But hula is also done seated. So I'm seated here, and hopefully you'll join me in learning this hula, which you can practice. Hula is such a great way to keep your strength and your mobility, your flexibility. Also, it's a wonderful motor coordination and mind, body, and breath connection. Often when we're moving and exercising, we're not conscious of our breath. But hula helps you to keep centered and move with your breath rather than holding it or taking shallow breaths. So it's a great way to keep your strength and mobility and your flexibility, and also to work on your mind-body connection. When I mention motor coordination, they say that learning dance or learning a foreign language are great ways to keep your mind strong, and it's a wonderful way for brain health to continue as a preventive as we age. So join me in learning this hula noho, sitting on the front half of your chair with your knees right above your ankles, your feet hip distance apart, maybe the outer edges of your feet parallel, so you have a nice foundation from which to work. And think also about your posture as we dance. So your shoulders above your hips and your ears above your shoulders, sitting nice and tall as though there were a thread pulling you up from the crown of your head, and you're grounded through your sitting bones on that part of the chair. Hawaii Pacific Neuroscience is a neuroscience center that focuses on overall brain health and well-being. We would like to encourage you to explore the 6 pillars of brain health by following us on all social media platforms. For more information about our services and clinical trials, please visit our website, hawaiineuroscience.com. We welcome your ohana. Mahalo.